This film integrates the model Urban Design Project 1 in the University of Sheffield. Since the main purpose of this project is to try to organize a better public space in Braamfontein, this film will provide a thought of how and why can spatial agents help to face the challenge of structures and spatial issues. But what is spatial agency? In order to explain it, we need to understand what is space and agency. The Lefebvrean concept of spatial expands the possibilities of the term architectural. Space is understood not only as physical shape of place, but all social, economic and political interaction between the people inside the physical space. On the other hand, agency comes mainly from the ideas of Anthony Giddens and only recently has come to the architectural discourse. Agency is the ability of the individual to act without being constrained from the structures of the society. In this sense, structure is every form of organization of a society. But when we speak about spatial agency, the opposition between agency and structure is no longer valid, because the spatial agent can act on the structure, making a spatial difference. An agent can act otherwise. The architect as an agent has to promote these transformative actions. The text of Awan, Schneider and Thiel defines spatial agency also as alternative architecture practice. But these three words become increasingly limiting in a project that should be expansive and empowering. Next, we will make explanation as to why they think these words do not work completely. This is because it's always related to the notion of norm. First, different people have different interpretation of what is norm and then alternative. Second, the alternative is necessarily reactive to the norm and thus may remain neutral to it. Third, the dialectical operation of the alternative suggests that one should abandon all the structures and rituals of the norm. The majority of architects spend most time designing and detailing buildings. The architectural production becomes limited when it's only concentrated on the building itself, associating architecture with building as an object, which may emphasize too much on the object form. The second limit of association of architecture with building is that it can commodify architecture. Building is too easily appropriated into commodity exchange of the marketplace. The third limit of architectural is that suggests that only architects are involved in the creative production of the built environment. Famous architects are usually those who have developed through practice a defining character of their work. But the third term that we found limiting was practice, mainly because of its connections of habit and unreflective action, also repetition. For critical practice, we use the accepted word praxis. Praxis in the sense of action propelled by a critical understanding of external conditions, moves away from the normative concerns and structures of traditional practice and also away from the endless desferal and retreat of critical theory and practice. As previously, traditional theories have a lot of limits and drawbacks. Spatial agency seems more flexible and effective. It is an ecological, ethical, pedagogical, political, and professional method to deal with the spatial problems. The Brazilian research group MOM, Morar de Outras Maneiras, also looks to the role of the architect not only as one who builds finished objects, but also who thinks about open processes that can transform the city. They have three different approaches to show how the architects can act. The first one is to be critical in both theoretical and practical level with the process and with ourselves. Secondly, the architect can act as a mediator. They don't try to make the city alone, but engage certain groups to produce his own space. Finally, the product of the work of an architect can be an interface, an open object which allows people to make their own decisions. Spatial agents can become negotiators of existing conditions to organize the space through appropriation, dissemination, empowerment, networking, and subversion. Here are two examples that spatial agency used in South Africa. The first case is Aziye Etafuleni. It's a non-government organization set up to support informal traders by providing design and development expertise. Since these traders used to lack of this knowledge, and cannot participate in consultation process with city officials on equal terms. In this project, it involves many street traders and seeks to establish their rights to trade in a manner that suits with their established traditions and values rather than the standards associated with the formal economy. The other one is about a project made by Noero Wolf architects. Their project have always reflected by the locals since they involve in local community activities and try to train them to build their own constructions and environment. The visitors are not treated as consumers but active participants. In a werewolf practice, architecture has been used both as a form of resistance and later as a transformative practice that manages to empower and to provide hope in a context where buildings and urban design have been put to a such oppressive use. As previously stated, Spatial Agency is a project that presents a new way of looking at how buildings and space can be produced. It proposes a much more expansive field of opportunities in which architects and non-architects can operate. Finally, some questions for further debate. What are our limitations to propose something to Braamfontein? How can we be critic and self-critic to this process? Who is producing, using and building Braamfontein nowadays? Who should also be part of it, but is out of the process? Who has the right to use and produce the spaces there?